So welcome everyone. First, actually, my name is Perry Graham. My wife and I, Christy Graham, who's online, we operate a group called Muskoka Canadians for Truth. We're based out of Huntsville here in Muskoka, and so we're the moderators tonight. Christy and I are co-hosting, and so we will endeavor to together moderate the evening and mute, unmute, etc. Of course, we ask you to be polite both if you're speaking and in chat, and we reserve the right to put our thumbs down in case anybody gets out of hand. But I don't expect anything with this crowd, but just so you know. We'll ask that if you can wait to the end of the presentations. Each one will be about 20 minutes for questions, and you can raise your hand through the reactions button on the bottom of Zoom. Raise your hand in order to ask questions. Preferably wait till the end. If for some reason you can't stay, maybe put it in the chat and you need to ask your question now, then we'll try to be accommodating, but we would prefer if you can wait to the end to ask the question. Okay, so we'll start off with Dr. Magda Havath. She's a professor emeritus at Trent University here in Ontario.
Perry, can I just ask you, did you press record again?
Yes.
Oh, my apologies. Sorry. Do you want to start that over? I didn't realize you had.
All right. Yes. So Dr. Magda Havath is going to lead us off tonight. She's professor emerita at Trent University here in Ontario in Canada. She does research on the harmful effects of electromagnetic pollution and on the beneficial effects of electrotherapies. Her research involves determining how to diagnose electrohypersensitivity and how to help people recover. She's authored more than 200 publications and given more than 300 lectures in 30 countries around the world, including many lectures for continuing medical education. She provides scientific advice to NGOs and expert testimony in legal cases as well. Her previous work on air pollution helped bring in clean air legislation in Canada and the US, and she's hoping that her current work on electrosmog will do the same. She does research with individuals who have electrohypersensitivity and trains medical doctors about this illness. And tonight she'll talk about the pros and cons of 5G, particularly. And her websites I will put in the chat for you can look at. So I'll lead it off to, so Magda, you should be able to just take over. You're off mute, you're on Zoom, and you should be able to share your screen without me having to do anything if I've done everything correct. So take it away, Magda.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I will now share my screen as I have a presentation that is pre-recorded, so it'll be approximately 20 minutes. And here we go. Can everyone see that?
You can, yes.
And I will get rid of, there's some, I'm going to hide the video panel and meeting control. So theoretically, you should be able to see the entire slide. First of all, Perry, thank you very much for inviting me to this meeting that you're having. I'm going to be discussing 5G technology. And I think many of us who do research in this field realize this is a huge experiment that is being conducted, and it's something that we should all be aware of so that we can deal with it properly. And without further ado, I'm simply going to start my presentation. If for some reason you have difficulty hearing it, could you please let me know, and we'll see if we can make changes as needed. Here we go. We are at the beginning of one of the largest experiments ever conducted on this planet. 5G is being rolled out across the globe, and no one really knows what the consequences of this are likely to be. The title of my talk is Discussing the 5G Experiment. I bring this information to you both as a research scientist, as I do research on the biological effects of electromagnetic pollution, and as a teacher, since I've been teaching about this subject for the past 25 years at Trent University. What is 5G? 5G refers to fifth generation communication technology. It allows for faster connectivity. 1G provided voice, 2G provided text, 3G allowed us to connect to the internet, 4G allowed us to download videos, 5G will allow for technology that communicates at the speed of light with fast, almost instantaneous download speeds. It will allow for the Internet of Things and will go well beyond cell phones and their applications. How does 5G differ from other wireless technology? It's important to note that 5G will not replace 4G. It will be in addition to all other frequencies currently generated, which means we will have more exposure to microwave radiation once 5G is activated. 5G will use several frequency bands in the low, mid, and high band frequencies. The high band consists of millimeter waves that we will discuss in more detail later. 5G also means the densification of small cell antennas in urban and rural areas. A small cell will be placed on lampposts or telephone poles every 100 to 300 meters, depending on location. What do we know about the 5G infrastructure? The infrastructure will consist of satellites, macro cell sites, small cells in front of homes, and fiber optics. Fiber optics are the safest as they don't emit radiation. My colleagues who know more about satellites than I do tell me this is a relatively safe technology, provided the exposures are low. However, if the intensity is increased, satellites could be weaponized. Macro cells are dangerous if you live near them. The greatest concern is the small cell antenna in front of your home, as this is going to be difficult, if not impossible, to avoid. There will be winners and losers with 5G. Some people are going to make a lot of money, and some people are going to become very ill because of the massive amount of additional data that is going to be generated. 50 trillion gigabytes of data converts to exposure. Why is the government not putting on the brakes? In 2015, the Federal Communication Commission made $45 billion selling a part of the wireless spectrum. The government didn't want to put a ban on tobacco sales because they were receiving a lot of money from tobacco taxes. The same seems to be the case with wireless. Why should we be concerned about 5G? We have no long-term testing of the biological and health effects of millimeter waves, yet we are going to expose the entire planet to these frequencies. This really doesn't make any sense. 2G, 3G, and 4G frequencies are already causing adverse biological and health effects to humans and other living organisms. We are learning about the health effects as we document the cancers, the damage to sperm, and the harmful effects on plants and animals. Our love affair with wireless started with the cell phone in the early 1990s. And while we have a choice as to whether we use a cell phone or not, we don't have a choice as to where the cell phone antennas are placed. We have a choice about Wi-Fi in the home, but no choice about Wi-Fi in the schools. Children are being exposed to microwave radiation for 6 hours every school day without parental approval. Most of us have no choice about smart meters placed on our homes or smart appliances and their radio frequency chips they contain. And now we have thousands of satellites being deployed and small cell antennas being placed in our neighborhoods with no choice regarding their placement. Why should we be concerned about 5G? Because it means more radiation, and it means we have no choice in the matter. How much radiation can the human body tolerate? On this map, you can see some purple spots that represent Wi-Fi hotspots in 2002. These were mostly at universities, research institutions, and military installations. We have moved from very little Wi-Fi radiation in 2002 to almost global coverage in just 16 years. What are the key concerns about wireless smart technology? By the way, smart refers to two-way communication. It does not need to be wireless. We're concerned about human health effects, addiction, social skills, safety, security, privacy, effects on flora and fauna, energy consumption, and global warming. I want to divert to an issue of privacy for a minute. In China, students wear these wireless headbands that monitor brainwave activity. The colors determine if the student is focused or distracted. This information is sent to the teacher's iPad and the parent's iPhone. One student was interviewed who said that he gets into trouble if he's distracted in class. The problem is these devices emit microwave radiation, and the radiation may make it hard for some students to pay attention, especially if they're electrically hypersensitive. In some schools, students have jackets with RF sensors to determine where they are at all times. China also uses facial recognition inside buildings as well as on the street. And you can now make purchases with facial recognition rather than with credit cards or money. And for those who think this can't happen in North America, think again. Schools in New York want to install facial recognition to prevent mass shootings and other disruptions in the school. San Francisco is one of the first United States cities to ban facial recognition. Dr. Cindy Russell reviewed the literature on millimeter waves, which is part of the 5G rollout, as it relates to public health and the environment. And this is what she found. Millimeter waves have been used to reduce pain in Eastern European health studies. This is good. Millimeter waves are also used as part of the active denial system for crowd control. This is also good, better than being shot, for example. Millimeter waves are proposed for the Internet of Things, but this is not a good use of the technology. The reason is duration of exposure. With medical and military exposure, the duration is measured in seconds and minutes. When telecommunications, it is constant exposure 24/7, and this is what makes it potentially harmful. Millimeter waves are not supposed to penetrate deeply into the skin, so the skin surface, and particularly the sweat glands, are the targets for millimeter waves. The skin is one of the largest organs and separates us from the environment. Systemic signaling is embedded in the skin that connects to the nervous system, the immune system, and the hormonal system. So there is a possibility of considerable damage being caused at the skin surface. Some frequencies cause arrhythmia or an irregular heartbeat, and eyes are known to be very sensitive to this radiation, resulting in cataracts and other ocular pathologies with prolonged exposure. We have evidence that the immune system is impaired in laboratory studies with mice. There are teratogenic or birth defects among fruit flies, and we have evidence for antibiotic resistance caused by millimeter waves. For those who have not watched the 5G Crisis Summit, I strongly encourage you to get copies of the 40 interviews with the experts around the world. These include scientists, doctors, engineers, lawyers, politicians, and activists. Cost of the series is reasonable. In this summit, several of the people mentioned the Nuremberg Code. The Nuremberg Code is part of the international humanitarian law that states it is unethical and illegal to perform experiments on humans without their informed consent. According to this law, 5G should be illegal as people are not giving their informed consent to be exposed to this radiation. Why are these products allowed? Here we have a diaper that will alert the mother's iPhone that when the diaper is wet. This exposes the infant to microwave radiation. Here we have a pacifier that has a thermometer inside and sends information about the infant's temperature to the parent's iPhone. So we now have an RF emitting device inside the head of an infant. Who is regulating this industry? What did German doctors do during the Holocaust? They sterilized millions of their citizens. The excuse for doing nothing was, it's too horrific to believe this is happening. We were just following orders. Refusal meant instant death. What are the side effects of microwave radiation? Damage to sperm, leading to infertility and ultimately to sterility. The excuse for doing nothing? I didn't know it was harmful. I don't believe it's harmful. I'm just one person. What can I do? I'm past reproductive age. What do I care? Which of these excuses will you find acceptable when you discover you are unable to have grandchildren? Here we have 4 slides of human sperm. Some of the sperm were unexposed controls, and some were exposed to 2.4 gigahertz, which is the same frequency used in Wi-Fi. The slides are based on 1 and 5 hour exposure. You can see the sperm moving well in all of the slides except for the bottom right slide. This slide was exposed to Wi-Fi radiation for 5 hours. Most people will work on their laptop computers connected by Wi-Fi to the internet for much longer periods, and they are probably damaging their sperm as a consequence. The health effects of radio frequency fall into 3 categories. Reproductive problems that I just mentioned. These include miscarriages as well as developmental and behavioral problems in offspring. Cancers, mostly associated with the head, but also breast cancer for women who keep their cell phones in their bra, and leukemia for people who happen to live near cell phone antennas, and electrohypersensitivity, or EHS. And you can see some of the more common symptoms here: sleep disorders, chronic fatigue, chronic pain, poor memory, depression, anxiety, etc. What is the evidence for electrohypersensitivity? I'm going to provide 2 provocation studies. These are studies testing the effects of microwave exposure on the blood and on the heart. Provocation test number 1. Microwave radiation affects the blood of some people who have electrohypersensitivity. Here we take a drop of blood, put it on a slide, and view it under the microscope. The top slide shows my blood before I was exposed to Wi-Fi. The cells are round and free-floating in small, loose groupings. The slide at the bottom shows what happens to my blood when I spend 10 minutes exposed to Wi-Fi. Every cell on the slide is sticking together. This type of blood is unable to efficiently deliver oxygen and nutrients to cells and get rid of waste products produced by cells. And it's called rouleau formation. Dr. Stephen Sinatra, a world-renowned cardiologist, says that our blood should have the consistency of red wine. Instead, most of us have blood with the consistency of ketchup flowing through our veins. This is rouleau formation. Symptoms include headaches, fatigue, dizziness, difficulty concentrating, numbness, tingling and cold extremities, heart and blood pressure problems, and, in severe cases, heart attacks and strokes. In this provocation study, we asked the question, does radiation from a cordless phone affect the heart? As soon as you plug a cordless phone base station into an electric outlet, the phone sends out microwave radiation. This was a double-blind, placebo-controlled study. Neither the person being tested nor the doctor assessing the results knew when exposures were taking place. Here we have one example showing real-time monitoring. A 56-year-old woman was exposed to the radiation from the cordless phone during sessions 3 and 5 in this experiment. You can see her heart rate increases during exposure from 65 to 86 beats per minute and returns to normal once the cell phone is unplugged. All of these changes in heart rate are also showing as changes in heart rate variability. There is an upregulation of her sympathetic nervous system and a downregulation of her parasympathetic nervous system, which is a typical stress response, and the body does not function well under chronic stress. Students at a school in Simcoe County started to complain of various health effects shortly after the school installed Wi-Fi. Several complained of heart palpitations that were experienced only at school. 4 students experienced sudden cardiac arrest, 2 of which were fatal. The youngest child was only 13 years old. As a solution, the school installed defibrillators. Fact: microwave workers are experiencing heart problems. Research published in 1969 showed that those occupationally exposed to microwave radiation experienced heart problems. So, in the interest of occupational hygiene, researchers have recommended that cardiovascular abnormalities be used as a screening criteria to exclude people from occupations involving radio frequency exposure. Perhaps students should be screened for an underlying heart condition that could be made worse with Wi-Fi exposure. How many people have electrohypersensitivity? Between 1 and 5% of the population is severely affected by electrosmog, and these people are often confined to their homes and become quite ill when traveling, shopping, going to restaurants. I use 3% to represent these individuals. Another 35% of the population has mild to moderate sensitivity. They can still function in an exposed setting, but often feel lethargic, have brain fog, and otherwise feel subnormal. With these percentages, we have approximately 1 million people in Canada with severe sensitivity, 10 million in the United States, and 15 million in the European Union. These numbers are likely to increase following the rollout of 5G. One comment I sometimes hear is, if this were true, they would have told us. A publication in 1971 cited over 2,000 papers on the harmful effects of microwave radiation. More recently, in 2015, 248 scientists from 42 countries signed an international scientist EMF appeal that was sent to the World Health Organization and the United Nations Environmental Program with warnings about exposure to microwave radiation. Manufacturers are warning about keeping wireless devices away from the body, and insurance companies are not insuring against health effects caused by radiofrequency radiation. Medical academies are warning that guidelines are inadequate to protect children against radiofrequency radiation, and various governments around the globe are banning Wi-Fi in schools and are hardwiring schools with fiber optics, which are faster, safer, and much more secure than Wi-Fi. They are telling us we aren't listening. As elected officials, mayors and councillors have a responsibility to their community. It's critical that members of municipal governments learn as much as possible about 5G. Telecom providers will ask for permission to place small cells on lampposts and on other public property. Municipal governments do not have to approve of locations for small cell antennas. They will be overruled by the federal government. However, should scientific evidence of harm be provided in the coming years, at least they will not be complicit in the decision to expose the public. Legal action is likely in the near future. Some municipalities are requesting the following: annual review of contracts for the location of small cell sites, ability to have small cells removed with no legal penalty should the science indicate harm, regular monitoring of exposure before and after small cells are installed, establishment of a health registry for reporting adverse biological and health effects associated with 5G antennas that also involves investigation of the complaint in a timely fashion. Wait a minute, something feels wrong. Warning, cliff ahead. They're not listening. More videos are being produced on 5G technology. Here are 3 videos that I encourage you to watch. The first provides technical information about 5G that is easy to understand. Video 2 contradicts some of the information in video 1 as Verizon tests its rollout of 5G. 5G performs much better than expected. Video 3 is a long video where the former Federal Communication Commission chair speaks about 5G. This video provides an excellent insight about who is running the show and what their views are on health effects. Please share this video with those concerned about 5G technology. Thank you for watching. Okay, that is my presentation. And you might want to go to the other 2 presenters before we open it up for questions, but that's your choice.
I think that that's what we'll do. I only see one hand, but it's Brenda at the moment. I think she dropped her hand. All right. So we'll move on to Sheena Symington, who is the director of Electrosensitive Society, and she has a background in biological and environmental sciences and has been researching the effects of chemical and electromagnetic pollutions on natural and human ecosystems. She was an invited speaker at the EMF Medical Conference in 2021 and is also invited to share her strategy with the National Council on Disability in the USA in May 2022. She works with hospitals, educational institutions, and workplaces to create low electromagnetic exposures, which help provide full access to those suffering from EHS. She's been successful at providing access to those with EHS within hospitals and is working on a protocol to eliminate electromagnetic exposure within these facilities, for particularly dangerous places. She provides personal consultation services online and by phone to help people with EHS and their families who struggle due to electromagnetic exposure. So, Sheena, I think you should be able to just take over and expose. Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Sheena. Take it away.
Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. And thanks for the introduction. I won't have to introduce myself in any way. So the World Health Organization defines electrohypersensitivity as idiopathic environmental intolerance. That's the most recent definition, but earlier on in 2004, they talked about it was a phenomenon where individuals experience adverse health effects while in the vicinity of emitting electric and magnetic or electromagnetic fields. They talked about being a real and debilitating problem of people, but they really didn't understand as to why this was happening and why electromagnetic fields were triggering this reaction. So I'm going to present a little bit of information that Dr. Havas and I have put together on what causes EHS. First, this is just a list of symptoms most common with EHS. And some of them in the orange are one of the more common symptoms. There's a whole host of symptoms, and some people that are electrosensitive have one or two of these symptoms, but many people have, some of them have all of the symptoms. And some of them can be very incredibly debilitating. So they're literally debilitated in the presence of electromagnetic fields and frequencies and radio frequency radiation, while others are able to manage these symptoms by medication and various strategies. So what causes EHS? Dr. Havas and I have found that there are 5 common precursors for EHS. One is physical trauma to the central nervous system, so whiplash or concussion. The second precursor is chemical exposure. So if they have exposure to pesticides, metals through fillings, drugs, tattoos, that can lead to becoming more susceptible to developing EHS. Electrical exposure, whether it's chronic or acute exposure. Biological trauma, so if you have mold exposure or a high parasite load or Lyme disease. And then the 5th precursor is an impaired immune system. So anything else that is taxing your immune system really can become one of the precursors of developing EHS. One of the key issues that we talk about is it's a biological response, and Magda has presented information tonight about live blood analysis and heart rate variability monitoring. And I'll add some of the work we've done with plant growth and Wi-Fi. I'll also I'll show you a 2-minute video or 1.5-minute video just documenting the heart rate variability that Magda presented in the previous video.
Well, 16 by 9 wanted to test the power of Wi-Fi, so we went to visit environmental scientist Magda Havas from Trent University to do another test. Professor Havas's subject, Martin, who calls himself electrically sensitive, is hooked up to a heart monitor, and Havas sets up a wireless computer.
Well, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking Martin and exposing him to microwave radiation from Wi-Fi, the same type of thing that we have in schools, for example, and just monitoring his heart to see if his heart reacts to any of the radiation radiation. He won't know when things are turned on or off, so it's going to be a blind study in that regard.
With the Wi-Fi plugged in, Martin's heart rate accelerates in mere moments.
Now I can feel something. It's going through my chest. I feel it down in my legs too.
The closer the router is, the greater his reaction.
A few seconds ago, it was like my chest was actually jumping in the middle here.
Then, seconds after the wireless internet is unplugged, just like that, his heart rate slows down.
Martin, how are you feeling right now?
Fine, I don't think there's anything on.
But listen to this. Those levels Martin was exposed to, well, they're acceptable according to Safety Code 6. So if they're safe, why was his heart racing? Magda Havas has a theory.
So some percentage of the population is reacting to these microwave radiation at levels well below Safety Code 6.
But I'm not sick from Wi-Fi and I use it all the time.
Well, not everyone has the same sensitivities. We have children who have peanut allergies. We have people who are allergic to pollen. They react to pollen. And it's same with electrical sensitivity. Only a percentage of the population react.
And Magda's already given values on the percentage of the population that are possibly reacting to this type of technology. And I encourage you to look at the whole global 16:9 clip. It's really worthwhile. It was really focused on schools and the Wi-Fi installation within schools. So we wanted to see how plants responded when exposed to Wi-Fi. And so when peas were exposed for 30 days, their shoot growth was impaired. You can see the reference plants on the right almost have double the shoot growth. Their root growth was also severely impacted. Literally, there was the Wi-Fi plants were absent. There was absolutely no root growth on the left-hand side, you can see. The location of the Wi-Fi router was where the red arrow is. So literally, the pea plants literally grew away from the Wi-Fi router. Rather than growing straight up to the light as in the controls. And this was published in the Current Chemical Biology in 2016. One of the key issues that I help people with is trying to find safe housing that's low RF exposure and MCS friendly and mold free. So really just minimizing all toxins for these people that have these environmentally induced disabilities and sensitivities. So what would be really lovely is to have some underserviced areas, talking to the cell tower companies and really encouraging them that the areas that are already low exposure, maintaining them there. Just like we protect sensitive species, like sensitive wetland species, etc., and create a buffer zone around those areas, I'd really like to create these low exposure areas, electromagnetic radiation reduced areas, to preserve them, to provide access for living spaces for people who are so severely impacted by this radio frequency radiation, and also providing choice, because there's many people that they're not necessarily disabled in the presence of electromagnetic radiation, but they would choose to live in an area that is free from radio frequency radiation. So I think it's really critical that we create these areas to provide people choice. Many people that are diagnosed with EHS ill in the presence of wireless technology, they're actually forced to use mobile housing just because if there's a cell tower that goes up, they can move to another location. So they're using modular homes or RV trailers or container homes or tiny homes, and just gives them that flexibility to move to low exposure areas. We really need like emergency shelters, because what happens too sometimes is people are diagnosed with this electrosensitivity and they can't actually live in their homes anymore because of the proximity to neighbors, and they can't control the amount of radio frequency radiation they are exposed to. So they literally have to leave their home, literally becoming homeless. And COVID regulations, they shut down all the camping grounds and the shower facilities. So it was really, really impossible for many of these people to thrive given these conditions, and the awareness. There's such lack of awareness of the need to have these low exposure areas. Many of you won't know the sounds that radio frequency So there's meters that translate the radio frequency radiation into sound. And in the presence of radio frequency radiation, you can use this meter to identify different devices because they create a different sound signature. And I'll just play these for you. Whoop. Sorry. Oh, it's not going to do it. I won't be playing it for you. I'll come back to it, or I'll demonstrate with a live meter later on. So what I do is help provide access within hospitals, schools, and medical clinics. I've helped in grade school, high school, and college and university. We have been successful at providing access and eliminating electromagnetic exposure in 10 hospitals here in Ontario. There are step-by-step instructions of how to do this on my website, electrosensitivesociety.com. And it's really important with some of these medical clinics that I've been able to help reduce the exposure. They actually have remained Wi-Fi free and radiation free after providing access to some of their patients because their employees felt so much better at not having that exposure during the day. We simply turn off Wi-Fi wireless devices and power down routers. In one school, they were able to turn down the intensity of the Wi-Fi router to only 16%. And so it was really contained. It wasn't spilling over into all these other areas, and it was still working actually even better at a lower output. So again, you just use wired infrastructure, fiber optics, and shielded Ethernet cabling, similar to how we have accommodated other aspects of just having no sense, no Wi-Fi, and turning off your cell phone. It's really important to provide access to public spaces. There's been some success at libraries and grocery stores and health food stores. There's been Wi-Fi free Wednesdays. I've worked with a couple of hotels and restaurants talking about having this digital detox. So people are going to these facilities without their cell phones and without any Wi-Fi in the facility. So accommodating, just as you would
Meeting is being recorded.
Just as you would accommodate non-smoking, it's accommodating the same way for Wi-Fi. And like I said, in dentist offices and healthcare professionals, if anybody needs this type of help, I talk to doctors and hospitals and clinics and assessment facilities, really to provide access and just walk them through how to do that. Often people are quite willing to provide accommodation for those who need it. They just don't really know how. And it is actually quite simple most of the time. I really think it's the responsibility of each community to develop an infrastructure that's accessible to those who have EHS. And under the Ontarians with Disability Act, we're supposed to be fully accessible here in Ontario by 2025, and that would include these environmentally induced disabilities. Again, providing those cell tower free areas. In Peterborough, the city which I live in, the council here has an electromagnetic hypersensitivity tip sheet on how to provide access within a meeting. And again, very simple, just accommodating, just like you would have non-smoking areas, no Wi-Fi, turning the cell phones off, and using shielded Ethernet cable and fiber optics to provide access. So we're not eliminating the access to internet. We're simply creating it through wires. And there are recommendations for connected communities, wired fiber for sustainable last mile solutions. So the analogy I make for communities is that you have noise bylaws and you have, just like you would accommodate the smoking analogy, but with the noise bylaws, you want it contained. So with this wireless and radio frequency radiation and Ethernet connections, you want to contain those frequencies on wires and deliver them to each home. And then within the home, that last mile, the individual can decide what happens within their home, but it should be wired right up until the door of the individual homes. And having each community create a proactive antenna siting protocol, absolutely critical. And you know, there are ways on how to do this. There's lots of information on how to actually do this. Reinventing wires, the future of landlines and networks. So many communities have used fiber optics and wired solutions that have really been a protective step for their community members. and at the same time providing access for those who are disabled in the presence of it. And as it was said in the introduction, I'm a resource and an advocate for anybody who has electrosensitivity. And I just wanted to offer that again. I offer a weekly support group and many different ways that I support those with electrosensitivity. I'm happy to answer questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheena. Your presentation, is that on your website too? That presentation, or can you make that available?
No, a lot of the information is on my website, but that actual presentation is not. But I'm in the process of creating 10 slides for communities, because I think it's very difficult for communities to really know exactly how to do some of this. And one thing that I really try and make easy is the how to, because again, people are interested in doing it. They just need to know the steps.
Here I am breaking my own rules about asking questions in the middle of the presentation. So that's great. So I just wanted to try and make as much resources available to people after this Zoom too. So
and I'll put my website in the chat too. Thank you.
Very good. So Shelley Wright is our next speaker, and she has the benefit of being introduced twice, at the same price too. So Shelley Wright, the director of the national nonprofit organization Canadian Educators for Safe Technology. She's a retired teacher and works closely with students, teachers, staff, and parent volunteers who have been adversely impacted or permanently injured by radio frequency technologies in Canadian schools, particularly. Her organization promotes inclusive wired technology and safety in schools, and she herself has lived with electromagnetic disability for more than a decade. She was a feature regarding EMF at 2 accredited medical symposiums sponsored by Women's College Hospital in Toronto, and at the annual meetings of the Elementary Teachers Federation Ontario, she co-wrote and passed inclusive tech resolutions annually for 7 years with about 800 teachers present. I believe Shelley is focusing a bit on the local issues, but we'll pass it off to Shelley Wright to give her presentation. Shelley?
Thank you very much, Perry. It's wonderful to be here. And yes, my focus is on schools often, but because of the local cell tower that the proposal that happened this last May, this presentation is focused on that. Okay, I'm just going to screen share here. Okay. This presentation has 2 parts. Part 1, it provides information about the cell tower process in our local community in Huntsville. And Part 2 has information about how communities can balance both wired and wireless needs in communities. What we have learned through our cell tower opposition process is that proactive education is paramount. Long before any new wireless network antenna proposals emerge within your community, whether they are towers, poles, rooftops, smart meter systems, or other infrastructure, it's crucial to educate both residents and your land use authorities. Land use authorities include your city, town councilors, various committees, and municipal staff through means like open houses, one-to-one meetings, and online meetings aimed at raising awareness about essential and superior energy-efficient alternatives such as wired safe tech and RF absent areas. This needs to be included. Additionally, it's imperative to review local cell tower protocols and engage with the city or town council committees, as well as elected representatives, to ensure protocols meet community needs long before the proposals appear. City town councils typically have lawyers who can review and revise protocols as necessary to meet all the information communication technology requirements of the community. This proactive approach can help safeguard the community's interests well in advance of any proposal submissions. MPs can provide support. This is a 2-page letter sent by Federal Member of Parliament Peter Fonseca to Federal Innovation, Science, Economic Development, ISED Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne in May 2023. This excellent letter provides reasons to the minister why he opposes the cell tower based on failure to follow local protocols and why he supports his constituents' concerns. Sharing this letter can help inform elected representatives what can be done to assist and support their constituents. The telecom companies are aware of increasing public and scientific community concerns regarding adverse effects of radio frequency RF emissions. In their annual reports, these companies acknowledge the existence of studies which indicate a potential link between RF emissions from wireless devices, including 5G, and health concerns such as cancer. These annual company reports indicate that disclosing the scientific information may discourage the use of wireless devices and expose the companies to potential legal actions, even though they continue to state there's no definitive evidence confirming a direct correlation between RF emissions and these health issues. Consequently, they acknowledge this information may lead to more stringent standards, the specific outcomes of which remain uncertain. These are the steps mobile providers generally follow prior to a municipal vote of concurrence or non-concurrence. They sign a lease, provide an information package to inform residents within a radius of 3 times the height of the tower, and attend an open house to answer questions and respond to the community concerns in writing. Municipalities can say no, especially if towers are close to schools, splash pads, beaches, environmentally protected areas, or vulnerable persons. The town needs to know that although Innovation, Science, and Economic Development, or ISED, does not consider health effects, these effects are real and pose liability risks for the landowner and the municipality. Although the town's decision is usually accepted by the mobile provider, ISED will also not approve an application if the cellular provider does not adhere to local protocols or laws. Cell tower companies often set up an open house at town council meeting halls where residents can join in person or attend in Zoom, but sometimes there is limited opportunity to genuinely seek solutions to meet communication ICT needs of the community. The mobile provider no longer attends these meetings. Instead, they hire a third-party proponent to represent them. When asked difficult questions, they can either claim they don't know or provide oversimplified or sometimes incorrect answers. They offer to follow up with an answer which actually removes the question from public debate. They can put a spin and doubt on health and environmentally induced disabilities, of which they are not qualified to report on, as they are not physicians trained to diagnose and treat medically vulnerable people. Although the municipal government, also known as the Land Use Authority or LUA, cannot use health or property values to oppose a cell tower location, if the town is aware of the potential injuries and liabilities cell towers can pose in densely populated residential areas, they may genuinely persuade the mobile provider to find an alternative location or alternative technology. Town councils can use the following reasons to oppose a cell tower. The provider did not adequately prove the need or prove the gap in coverage, or the provider did not prove that it is impossible to use existing towers, or prove that alternative locations or proposed technologies were not adequate. The town can also oppose a tower if the provider did not comply with the requirements of the municipality's antenna sitting protocol or the ISED Client Procedures Circular CPC 2003, which includes the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act, CEEA, CEAA, and the Safety Code 6. Although the town can't use health reasons, residents should request that it be documented in the meeting minutes that there is a concern of harm to people to establish a record for potential future lawsuits. The introduction of Client Procedure Circular CPC 2003 ISED states, in exercising its mandate, Innovation, Science, and Economic Development Canada, ISED, believes that it is important that antenna systems be deployed in a manner that considers the local surroundings. In addition to the Impact Assessment Act requirements, proponents are responsible for ensuring that antenna systems are installed and operated in a manner that respects the local environment and that complies with other statutory requirements, such as those under the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, 1999, the Migratory Birds Convention Act, 1994, and the Species at Risk Act, as applicable. Providers will present arguments to support the proposed location without considering alternative technologies. They may not be able to provide adequate proof that there are real deficiencies in alternate locations. Most importantly, they may not be able to acknowledge the concerns of medically vulnerable or disabled residents who may be seriously injured and who require access to wired RF absent services. Proponents have been known to accidentally provide misinformation or omit key information so that the town and the community is not adequately informed, which can lead to a concurrence yes vote for the proposed tower. They may have told the municipal government that they have no authority to create bylaws that could be used to delay or deny a federal cell tower installation. Residents can request that they have the opportunity to assess the responses from the proponent to ensure that the responses are adequate. If your questions aren't adequately addressed, you can send your questions to the corporate head office of the provider, not the third-party company representing them. Since extensive published evidence indicates that radio frequency at levels compliant with federal government limits can cause cancer, increased oxidative stress, genetic damage, structural and functional changes of the reproductive system, memory deficits and behavioral problems, and neurological impacts, you can request the mobile provider provides proof of liability insurance that does not exclude health claims due to radio frequency RF radiation exposures. This part of the presentation was created for the Huntsville Town Council to promote wired communication services for electromagnetically disabled residents who attended the Canacre Open House representing Bell. These disabled residents face potential injury if the proposed cell tower is installed close to their homes. In this northern cottage community, both part-time and full-time residents desired wireless signals to their cottage docks, but the proposed cell tower's proximity to medically vulnerable residents up on the hill, including those with cancer or physician-diagnosed electromagnetic disabilities, posed significant concerns. Residents around the lake were not aware of the technical ability to have the wireless convenience without the cell tower. FTTP to the premises and a router providing Wi-Fi on their property would have enabled residents to make a cell call using Wi-Fi calling and effectively operate their wireless devices. This presentation primarily conveys the concerns of 20 vulnerable residents who required RF absent wired communication services. It highlights the dilemma when some residents call for wireless broadband for convenience and perceived lack of emergency services, while others need RF absent wired fiber optic broadband to support their disabilities or chronic illnesses. This deputation, initially prepared for the town of Huntsville, emphasizes the divergent technology needs which can exist in communities and proposes effective solutions to address these disparities. We advocated for the Municipal Land Use Authority to seek a balanced solution and alerted them to the potential liability concerning reinsurers' electromagnetic field exclusions. This presentation will share the insights gained from navigating this complex process. Preventing harm to residents is a top priority in municipal governments, regardless of what the issue is. This requires an open collaboration between town council, its proponents, and the persons with firsthand experience and with RF emission-related injuries or disabilities. It is responsible to request a town council actively ensures that all residents are protected from potentially life-threatening circumstances. Compassionate communities respectfully work together and consider the win-win solutions that will meet the needs of residents who want cellular convenience and additional emergency services, and provide solutions for those who require essential, accessible RF absent homes. Town council should not tolerate lack of knowledge of needs, cruelty, promote or propagate emergency fear or lack of respect for disabled persons. The location of this bell tower will have no negative impact on schools, hospitals, protected natural areas, playgrounds, trails, or public beaches where people with medical sensitivities need to go to heal. But it will impact 3 families with EHS disabled members. Towers do not belong near vulnerable persons or ecologically sensitive areas. Industrial and rural areas far from densely populated areas are more ideal. We informed the municipality and community about adverse health effects such as heart arrhythmias, migraines, and serious vertigo and nausea. We explained that microwave frequency emissions can induce permanent injuries such as stroke or heart failure, autism, or neurodegenerative diseases such as ALS, MS, or Parkinson's. Residents close to the tower will experience greater intolerance as proximity to the tower increases the signal strength. Scientists reported asbestos-related injuries showed up 30 years after exposure. Comparatively, life-threatening RF injuries are beginning to show up within a mere 10 years. Before the approval, an establishment of a health registry did not occur. As Sheena mentioned, some people with head injuries or additional environmental toxins can become electromagnetically disabled. Shelter is an essential service. EHS disabled residents are protected under the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disability Act, AODA, and they have a medical note from a doctor trained to diagnose and treat microwave sickness. These residents required access to essential services, including shelter needed at home in the Huntsville community. The proposed tower site is too close to 3 known medically residents who live within 100 to 300 meters. 2 of these families moved from cities specifically to Huntsville to find an accessible place to live. I have lived with EHS and I know firsthand how difficult it is to find a survivable place to live and to work. Municipalities could be liable for adverse health effects associated with cell tower exposures, electrosensitivity, breast cancers, leukemia, etc., considering the needs of EHS disabled residents and avoid costly trial and error. Most insurance plans have electromagnetic field exclusions. Collaborative community discussions can lead to a better understanding of the variety of services VAL can provide to support residents who want cellular connection and those who require protection. To protect physician-diagnosed EHS disabled residents, ICT equipment, services, and infrastructure installations must be intentionally designed and located to minimize the physical impact of RF around private homes where vulnerable people reside. VAL's engineers are trained to find solutions to support the Canadian Radio Television Communication Canada CRTC mandates, including the provision of wired and wireless signals and services and inclusive ICT services for disabled Canadians. Potential solutions included fiber optics to the premises. FTTP can provide wired signals, allowing homeowners to choose wireless or wired connections inside the home. Wired FTTP services also create RF absent areas for EHS disabled people who require protection. Wireless routers can boost signals to the dock. If small antennas are required, VAL could ensure signals do not overlap on adjacent properties or impact the public right-of-way, but provide cellular service to the dock for residents who want this extra coverage. Companies sometimes threaten to remove services completely if councils don't comply with the yes letter of concurrence. Companies can also promote emergency fear among community members. Most people are not aware that 911 calls are automatically picked up by the closest provider, regardless of who their provider is. Over the past 100 years, remote emergency calls were delivered by emergency radios. These services are still available and are more reliable than dropped calls from wireless towers in adverse weather conditions. Having an emergency radio close by can provide reliable emergency connections to families. Fiber optics to the premises is superior to wireless broadband. Wireless signals are costly for municipalities, requiring an estimated 10 times more energy than wired signals. FTTP is a superior ICT service which consumes up to 10 times less energy and is 100 times faster and more reliable and resilient in adverse weather conditions, and protects the security and privacy. Wired phones work during power outages. In summary, FTTP requires less energy. From cradle to grave, FTTP is more sustainable, is mostly glass and plastic, and doesn't rely on heavily on rare minerals. Wireless cell networks are often upgraded, whereas cable or fiber is laid once. Vulnerable residents who are adversely impacted by microwave cell tower emissions can file a complaint with their local health department to report injuries. They can establish a city or town registry through the town's Accessibility Advisory Committee in conjunction with affected residents' advisors for a timely coordination with wireless service providers. For those who are not comfortable with providing personal information in a registry, vulnerable residents may also create an EHS group in their community and connect with Sheena Simonton, the director of the Electrosensitive Society, who can share relevant information on her website to assist others. In summary, establishing a strong cell tower protocol in your community requires working with your land use authority. Each city council has lawyers who can revise these protocols. Educating your community about the harmful effects of cell tower signals can have on vulnerable residents, pollinators, wildlife, and the environment, and sharing the benefits of FTTP internet services can create a positive outcome rather than scrambling to educate everyone after your city council has voted in favor of a cell tower. Communities can reduce the number of cell towers providing adequate but minimum wireless signals FTTP to the premises, and a router providing Wi-Fi on their property will enable residents to make cell calls using Wi-Fi calling. Installing fiber optics to the premises and planning RF absent areas to balance the needs for superior signals while supporting the health of residents, especially young children, pregnant women, developing fetuses, will balance the different ICT needs of your community. Ensuring many public beaches and trails are RF absent will protect pollinators, migratory birds, and provide digital detox for medically vulnerable persons and children. In conclusion, our municipal government has the power to push telecom engineers to provide technical solutions which serve multiple needs in the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shelley.